Welcome to the Digital Agency Showcase for 2020. So our first speaker today is Luke Engel. So he's the co-founder and responsible for people and partnerships at MakeReign. And I must say, I'm really excited to have MakeReign presenting to us today. It's their first digital agency showcase. It's the first time we have seen MakeReign make this top 6 scoreboard as a judge by the bookmarks results and the IAB. And it's really great to have them, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what Luke is going to take us through. Let me just tell you a bit more about him. So as I said, he's co-founder and responsible for people and partnerships at MakeReign, and they're an award-winning design studio focused on product strategy, branding, user experience, and UX design. Their clients include Woolworths, Pineapple Insurance, the Y Group, IndieFin, and numerous international brands. Luke is a graduate of the AAA School of Advertising. He founded MakeReign with his brothers and another business partner. Oh, I can hear you now, Luke. Thank you in my ear. As far back as they can remember, ideas reign supreme with Luke and his brothers, from food trucks to concierge services to subscription-based businesses. But talking is the easy part. Goodness me, I know that. And they all came from the digital marketing and advertising space, and it made sense for them to continue on that path. But they wanted to focus more on product design and development as opposed to digital marketing, very, very topic du jour. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Luke.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Rob. Cool. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for the intro, Rob. I'm currently coming to you live from my laundry room. It's great that we're still able to do this, sort of kicking off the first ever online digital agency showcase. As Rob was saying, I'm Luke Engel. I co-founded MakeReign in 2016 with my brothers and my business partner, other business partner, Elise. I currently head up people and partnerships at MakeReign. So what does that mean? Sort of when you're working for a startup, you wear multiple hats. You're often required to do full multiple roles. But essentially, I'm responsible for growth of our people, our brand, and our partnerships. I'm very honored to be here today. I think there's some truly amazing speakers and some truly amazing work that won big at the bookmarks this year. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from the other speakers. And it's obviously great to be considered in such great company. As I was saying, I run MakeReign. We're a digital design studio. We're a bit different to the people here today. We're not an ad agency per se. We're a user interface and experience design studio. So sort of my talk is very much focused on sort of design and the design process and how we go about sort of thinking and approaching design. And so our studio is based in Woodstock. We started in 2016 and we've got sort of grown quite quickly. We now operate out of 3 spaces at the Woodstock, at the Salt Circle building. And we also have a team embedded at the Woodstock Exchange that works quite closely with our Woolworths team. Although our offices are looking a little bit more like this at the moment, I think we're sort of a lot luckier than most that we can continue to keep working. I think we were even luckier that we sort of had been trialing working from home from last year. So we sort of had all those learnings and those experiences that we've taken into working from home during this sort of quite surreal and difficult time. I think we were also quite lucky in that we switched to using Figma, which is a design tool which makes sort of cloud-based collaboration super easy, so we can sort of share files and work together quite easily. But it's quite interesting to see what the sort of work that's rise from work from home and whether this will be the new normal going forward. But of course, we've also wanted some office pets, so everyone kind of now has their own pets at home. When they do appear in the daily meetings, we all get really excited. They're kind of the only thing keeping us and holding the company together at the moment. But essentially what we do at MakeReign is we create digital solutions in 3 key areas. So I'm really going to sort of get into our design process and sort of take you through some case studies. But that's sort of really what this talk is focused on. So those 3 key areas being advanced websites and platforms, mobile applications, and creative content. So 3D renders, illustrations, infographics, videography, things like that. This is why we're here today. I was told no videos, but hopefully this video plays well for everyone. Yeah. Cool. So I hope everyone could enjoy in that video. So yeah, what I'm sort of going to get into today is give a little bit of context on who we are. You know, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with us. As Rob mentioned, this is our first digital agency showcase, but I figured it would help give some context into what we're going to get into today. I want to touch a little bit on what guides our thinking and how we get into the projects, how we sort of bring this through into the projects that we work on, run you through some case studies that hopefully give you some sort of practical things, some tips and tricks that you can sort of take, that you can come away from this talk with. You know, sort of the brief to me was really to chat about sort of projects that have challenged us, sort of the adversities, the mistakes and learnings that we've taken from those projects. So I kind of really wanted to focus this talk on how challenging and questioning things is very much ingrained in who we are and how we do things at MakeReign. So sort of show some case studies where we've taken a lot of learnings. So yeah, it's just a couple of quick ones, and then I'm going to do a more in-depth one. But context is very much everything. So understanding context is a key part of tackling any project, and understanding what it is you want to achieve. So with that in mind, I kind of want to give you a bit of context to what we do, and how we do it, and then sort of talk you through the projects. So some context on us. We essentially exist for two reasons. The first is to empower others with strong, informed design. You know, that's really sort of our mission at MakeReign. It's what really guides how we work and how we think about things, you know, so how we sort of bring strong design solutions to the people we work with. And through our work, we encourage and enable others to make meaningful things possible, in order to deliver better business outcomes. And sort of design is really having this sort of moment in the spotlight where you're seeing the role that design plays in offering companies a competitive advantage. If you're thinking of the likes of Apple and Nike, you're seeing more and more how design connects to a company's bottom line. You know, sort of these studies that have come out from McKinsey and Vision IBM showing the importance and the impact of design. So I think obviously if you're studying at the red and yellow and you're in the design field, you're sort of in a really great space to be in at the moment. And then the second reason is to collaborate with incredibly talented people. I think creating great work requires great people. Obviously, as the sort of person in charge of people at MakeReign, I have a bit of a bias, but I think we've sort of grown and invested a lot into our team. And I think building the best team and creating an environment that brings the best out of each other sort of allows you to put up the best work and sort of bring the best out in the people we work with. I think, like I said, the great news here is that designers are very much in demand. We're sort of seeing a growing expectation on designers today. More responsibility, more challenges. You know, we're wanting to make things simpler, better, faster. And we're sort of seeing the role that business and strategy is playing in design, and sort of how sort of designers now need to be really understanding the business aspect of design. So just some of the misfits that make up MakeReign. But that's sort of really what I wanted to get into today, was how we inform our design approach and our design decisions. You know, how do we go about things at MakeReign, and how does that inform our design process? Sort of how do we continue to learn, iterate, and improve throughout our design process? How do we challenge ourselves, question things, define our intent? How do we ideate, explore, and design solutions that incorporate data, but sort of as we continue going through the process, how do we bring more data into the process and improve based on that data, ultimately to get the best solutions in the hands of our customers? You know, sort of we love the design craft, and we've always been an interface company. But I think in order to make our offering more compelling and to solve true business problems, we needed to bring a strong UX research and strategy element to what we offer our clients. So, as I was saying, as we've matured as a design organization, discovery, research, and testing is very much part of our design process. You know, we've sort of started to think about our design process in a more methodical way. And it's really what informs our strategy, our design, and sort of how we implement products. So there's sort of a variety of services and techniques within each of these realms, which I won't get too much into today, but it's sort of from discovery workshops to interviews and observational studies. It's participatory design, usability testing. So really, with why discovery is so important is it allows us to take time to really understand the problem or the challenge at hand. So, you know, often clients can come to us and the concept, the brief, or the ask can be miles off what the solution should be. You see, like clients don't always really have the answers, and that's kind of why they're hiring us and wanting to work with us. but it's really important to start the process by taking the time to really deep dive into the particular project in front of us, challenging the brief, asking the questions, is this the right solution? Are we focusing our efforts on the right thing? Is this the right time for the company to be pursuing this project? Are we targeting the right people? Sort of let's get in a room, let's unpack as much information as we can to find the best possible solutions, and let's test those solutions. So let's take the time to understand the brand, the user, and context. This is such an important part of getting the process started. And like, as I was saying, with designers, we're expecting them to know a bit more of the business side. And we focus quite a bit on the user, but it's really important to get into the brand as well. So get into the business and sort of ask the questions: why does this business exist? What is its purpose? What are the objectives and challenges? And what does success look like? And then how can we as designers, or a design team, or a design studio, help you get there? So, at the end of the day, you're trying to create value for a company. Companies on the business of making money. So you really want to be sort of focusing on how you can help that business. But it's really important to bring your customers front and center. So what are the issues we're trying to solve for our users? What are the problems that they're facing? So we very much bring user research and testing into our design process. So from the very beginning, we're challenging and figuring out what the right solutions are. What is it we're trying to build? Understanding our users, their behavior, hearing their opinions, hearing their pain points, and taking those into account during product development really ensures that we're creating products that solve real problems and actually matter to our users. And I'm going to touch on context in a second, but I just want to sort of carry on a bit more with this, sort of talking to the people you're designing for. You don't want to make assumptions about them. But it's really important to speak to the people you're designing for. I think the challenge we see a lot on projects is that you have sort of different parties and different people, each sort of have their own worldview, each with their own reason for what they're doing, with their own processes, their ways of doing things, and it ends up being a sort of an internal fight and of people trying to figure out who's right. And it kind of ultimately means that your internal political battles are more important than your customers. So really important to talk to the people you're designing for and try and eliminate and remove your own biases from the process. So by doing research, speaking to our users, we get an unbiased perspective. So what matters to your business doesn't necessarily matter to your users, and sometimes we're just so close to the work, it's really difficult to take on a user's perspective. So really understand our users in order to anticipate and fulfill their needs. What are their goals? What are their frustrations, their pain points? What are their desires, their behaviors, their interests? What are their motivations, and what do they expect from the products that they use? And then of course context. So kind of taking a step back and looking at the greater scheme of things. What is happening in the industry? What are our competitors doing? What are the opportunities that have presented themselves? And then we start bringing all those learnings into co-creating solutions. So figuring out, how do we build this thing? What is the best way to build this? And you're still sort of involving people in that process. Whether it's through participatory design or through card sorting techniques, you're starting to sort of formulate the best strategies to deliver on the solution. And that's still really driven by your users and the people using your products. And then once we have a solution, we validate and we test that solution. So we continue to iterate based on learning. So we're still asking questions very much deep into the process of delivering a product to people. Is this the right solution? So we're still challenging our thinking, and we're still challenging what we've actually produced. So we're continually learning and uncovering new insights and improving throughout the process. I think there's a lot of insight to be learned, and there's this big focus on data, gathering insights. But I think you can have all the data in the world, and it really matters, what you do with that data. I kind of like to say we're informed by data, solutions driven. So it's like having a whole bunch of ideas that you can't execute on. So I think, for me, execution is just as important as ideas. So this is where you sort of, as a designer or a design team, you're bringing your craft and your intuition to the process, and really sort of how do we take this project forward from the data that we've got on hand to moving it forward. And we sort of do that by exploring different solutions. Then exploring different solutions based on the data, improving and iterating based on more data, and we're sort of continually improving and questioning things as we go along. And this ultimately leads to the right solution for the right people in the right context. That's sort of really our job, is to figure out, are we speaking to the right people? Is it the right context, and have we found the right solution? And that's very much how our design process is informed in order to create these meaningful experiences. And I'm going to sort of touch on how we've sort of brought that forward into some projects. So I just wanted to run through a couple of few. I think so now that you've got that sort of context on MakeReign and what we do, I think it's in sort of how we approach design and make experiences happen. I just wanted to sort of touch on those experiences quite quickly. So as Rob mentioned, sort of one of our big clients is Woolworths. Woolworths sought to update their existing mobile application in order to transform their digital offering, meeting customers where they are and offering them so much more. So apart from driving revenue and reducing the cost of service, so looking at those business goals that we mentioned, they wanted to develop a mobile application that would offer their customers more utility, make their lives easier, provide more value, and improve the overall customer experience. So now you're looking at the user and customer goals, which is really which is really important to bring through sort of into your design process. And how that sort of we've sort of translated that into the e-commerce space. So improving the customer experience and increasing conversions on the Woolworths website. So we sort of worked quite closely with their team to update the navigation structures, so making products easier for people to find. Sort of after extensive user testing, we introduced a filtered and faceted search and navigation system that made browsing Woolworths products, far more easier and seamless. Improving the way products are shown through a redesign of their product landing and product detail pages. So really bringing the products front and center, and improving and simplifying the user experience of finding products. So all with the sort of goal of boosting conversions and sales. Also really, really interesting projects we were involved in, and I kind of wanted to chat a bit more about this one, because it was quite a challenging project for us. But this was a sort of showcase for Parsons Branding, branding design and strategy studio in Cape Town, sort of with the key business objectives of garnering international attention for this niche high-end agency, showcasing their work and forward thinking, and in doing so attracting new clients and a high caliber of talent. And this is sort of an experience that we really wanted to surprise and delight people with. Like I mentioned, it was quite a challenging project. There's a lot of complexity that went into the build of this project. We built up these like really complex component-based case studies that really sort of pushed the limits of what the content management system we built on could do. The site was really well received, and sort of launched a whole bunch of stuff, and we're really, really proud of it. Also, sort of one of the big reasons we're here today is I work on the Pineapple project, and sort of creating meaning by using tech to reinvent the way that reinvent the way that insurance is done. So bringing sort of artificial intelligence and to improve insurance, so users can take a snap a photo of their items and insure their items anywhere, anytime, and sort of using the power of AI and image recognition technology, you improve that and make that process even faster. Meaning that people can insure items in around 30 seconds. We brought voice notes into the claim process so that you sort of improving and increasing the speed of the claim. So it's almost like in under a minute that you can submit a claim through the Pineapple app. And then of course shelf life was another really cool project that we got to work on. This project isn't quite live yet, so we're just sharing some of the sort of the initial style exploration. But they got in touch with us to really think and redesign their e-commerce store from scratch. Interestingly, 70% of their traffic comes from mobile. So we really had to take a mobile first approach, ensure product categorization was really intuitive. So we really improved the filtering and search functionality. So again, really thinking of how people use the products that they're engaging with. how do you make it easier to find the things that you're looking for, but also at the same time, how do you meet the needs of the brand by increasing conversions. And now for the sort of project that I sort of wanted to take a bit more time on. So sort of one key project that we worked through. I want to sort of chat about the business challenge and some of the user insights we uncovered during our design process, and how that sort of shaped our approach and how we delivered an informed design solution, which is really sort of our mission. So the project was for the Flash mobile app. It was a really, really interesting project. We sort of got to go into the field and test with users in the townships. I don't know how many of you know Flash, but they're a South African-based fintech company that enables informal retailers to sell virtual products such as airtime, data, and electricity. And what they do is they provide people with a digital device that prints tickets and enables millions of safe transactions daily. So I mean, you can have a look at some of those numbers there. It's quite impressive what they do. But what they really do is empower traders and enrich formal communities. And this is sort of what I was trying to get at with, sort of creating meaningful experiences. But if we're sort of going through that process of really taking the time to understand, as I mentioned previously, so looking at the brand goals and what we were trying to achieve with this project, and really trying to create an easy to use and understand platform. So particularly interesting when you have to ensure that elements of the app can be understood by people, even by people who can't necessarily read. How do we reduce user friction and pain points in their existing app? So they had a product already. And then of course, sort of as their user base increased and as the app evolved, features were being added to it fast, really continuously. So we needed to look at what had been created and improve the usability and really align its needs to align the product to the needs of the target market. And we really needed to speak to the customers to find out, what those needs were. So we took time to understand the users and the context. So in terms of context, we start looking at like competitor analysis. We researched 2 of their main competitors in the field, and sort of looked at their features, their functionality, their navigation patterns, and really sort of understand what the benchmark in the marketplace is. But since they also had a live app, we could also look at that itself and really do a usability evaluation. So sort of identifying areas that work well and areas that needed improvement. And these are the things we can start to address as part of our redesign. And then looking through customer support data. So looking through support queries, what people are saying in reviews on the App Store, sort of what are they struggling with? And that sort of really guides our next steps and our priorities. And that sort of led us to the first version of the product. So we developed some sort of lo-fi wireframes based on our desk research and some of the assumptions we had about how the target market uses the app. But really what we wanted to do was to get it into the hands of customers as soon as possible. So to really test our assumptions and bring people front and center. So we went into the field and did multiple rounds of testing. And it was really sort of interesting, sort of meeting users in their own context, so where they're using the products. A quick plug, our head of UX wrote a great article on designing realistic usability studies in the field. So in reality, most people spend their time in busy, messy environments, sort of battling with imperfect devices, slow internet speeds, interacting with products while simultaneously attending to other things. So it's sort of really important to kind of meet customers where they are in order to gain that sort of, that insight into how they really use the product. So you can check it out, medium.com/MakeReign. Really interesting article. But sort of back to the topic at hand. So we got the product into the hand of customers. We visited a Flash kiosk to understand the onboarding experience when they're buying a new Flash device. As I mentioned, I don't know if you can sort of see that little green device sticking out in the photo there. That's sort of the device that they get. So visiting the traders and observing how they sell Flash products, so we're asking them contextual questions and taking time to understand the pain points and really get into how they use the application. So sort of asking them, tell us a time you had a problem doing this or this action, or looking at specific tasks, please can you sell me this particular service for 100 Rand? So sort of really thanks to these interviews, we collected a lot of valuable feedback that helped us understand their way of thinking and how they use the app. And I think one of the most interesting insights that we found was that 100% of the people didn't see the navigation bar, the bottom navigation bar, or really understand what it meant. And it's such an interesting piece of user behavior. And it's something we wouldn't have learned if we hadn't put our customers front and center. We hadn't started speaking to users. So if you sort of see, before we had the bottom navigation, but based on that feedback, we're now developing a more tab navigation. And what's sort of really interesting about this is that the navigational structure follows a product that they use quite often. So sort of as we dug deeper into why they didn't understand it, a lot of people were saying that that some of the most common apps they used were WhatsApp for Android, which follows the sort of same lateral navigation with the use of tabs rather than a navigation at the bottom. So really sort of interesting insight that you really wouldn't have known if you hadn't put your customers front and center. But after that first round of testing, we obviously had to go back to the drawing board and sort of redesigning our product. And sort of one of our priorities during the second round of testing was to test that navigation bar, which had obviously been an issue the first time around. So again, interviewing 5 traders, but really trying to find more new insights. So getting to know them better, sort of focusing on the slightest details, the slightest insights, so sort of any information, even if it doesn't seem important at the time, we can sort of unpack later, and could make a difference later. And the sort of tests were really, really successful. We saw the use of the side navigation bar was really natural, but we sort of also learned that sort of the wording in the application needed to be improved. So you sort of, like I was saying, you continue to learning and you're improving as you go along. We also did some really interesting iconography testing, so to test their associations between icons and words. So again, you're sort of testing your assumptions. What do you think an electricity icon means, someone else might not. So really sort of taking that time to understand, and it's really important, sort of to make people feel comfortable when you're in these sort of environments. That any mistakes that they're making, it's not their mistakes, they're our mistakes as the sort of design team. So there's this sort of quote, I don't know if you can call it a quote, it's a tweet, but the user isn't always right, but what the user does is always right. So if the user doesn't, if they don't use your product the way they want to, you either have to change the product or educate them to use it differently. It is always your problem, not the user's problem. So it's sort of really interesting. And then, of course, we need to unpack this messy treasure and turn this feedback into actionable insights. So like I was saying, really taking that data, but how do we use that data to inform our solutions? So all the insights, all the learnings from this entire process, how do we bring that into our solution? So sort of one example was a key insight that some of the traders use a notebook to save their customers' information. We sort of observed someone, pulling out a sheet with sort of their contact list. So understanding, what is that friction point? A lot of them didn't know that they could use the contact list on their device, sort of separately from the app. So the solution then is add a step in the onboarding process to introduce that contact list. So you're educating your customers as part of the solution. And then sort of we launched the Flash, or it's still in development, but we sort of essentially landed on a final design based on all that sort of insight and that learning and that continual improvement throughout the process. And I think this is why sort of the validating and testing your solutions early on is so important, is that you're spending valuable hours and time on perfecting things that people might not necessarily care about. And they say sort of fixing an error after development is up to 100 times more expensive than fixing it during the process. So really sort of getting users and people involved in the process from early on is super, super important. So sort of by investing in user research and recognizing the importance of connecting closely with the target market early on, you're really delivering user-centric experience. So you have a final product that's designed for accessibility, is fun to use, and the new features are supported by the business objectives. So we've understand what the business needs are. We've understood what the user needs are, and we've sort of taken that through. Designers need to understand the business goals, objectives, and problems are key to finding the right solutions. We've got to continue learning, question everything, sort of master the art of asking questions, be inquisitive. Why is this way? Why is this that way? And it really teaches you about how people think about things, how people use things. Bring your customers front and center from early on in the process. Test and validate your assumptions. It's okay to make assumptions, but you really need to test them and prove them to be true. They're not always right, but sometimes they are. What you do with data is more important than the data itself. So sort of let that data inform your decisions, but use your gut and skills to move that forward and move the project forward. Our job is to find the right solution for the right people in the right context. Always be learning, improving, and iterating. It's all about creating meaningful experiences. Thank you.
I'm going to kick off with a question from Elaine Rumble. And Elaine, hi there, welcome, and lovely to have you today. Luke, Elaine asks, what is the mechanism, apart from dialogue, that you use when there is a creative clash between agency and client ideas? Oh, that is a hot topic.
Yeah, so I think put your customers and your users front and center. Sort of, as I was saying, you're not sort of speaking to the people that you're designing for. You're sort of your own internal battles prove to be more important. So yeah, I think sort of really, if you can say this has been tested with customers and this is what the customers are saying, I think you're able to solve those challenges a lot easier. So sort of, this is the data, this is what they're telling us. This is not my own perception or my own belief. This is sort of what the people that are using our product are saying.
100%. Well, Luke, let me give you a follow-up question from that. And this one's from Rob Stokes, amazing chap.
Sure.
So Luke, you talked a lot about getting insights from customers. And what I'm interested to know is, do you have a process that you recommend for doing this well? So how do you move from anecdata, as I call it, to actual data? How do you avoid confirmation biases? Because I've seen people talk to customers and they'll be like, do you prefer brown or the better black version? And then the customer tends to say the black version. How do you create a systematic process to make sure that the information that you're passing from the customers is coming unfiltered and you're able to make accurate decisions off it?
I think obviously that there is a lot of sort of a process to it, and sort of like we've obviously taken some time to think about that process in a more methodical way. And I think it's, really sort of, not allowing those biases to come in. Obviously easier said than done, but sort of really watching what people do, not what people say. So sort of really, I think it's kind of allowing people to interact with the things that you've built in the way you've built them, and sort of watching what they do, not what they say. I think that's sort of a great quote or a great way of thinking about things is, watch what they do, not what they say. Taking the time to implement these processes and do things a certain way allows you to do that.
It's an incredibly difficult topic, and I see very few businesses in their particular sector crack it, I must say.
I think it's it's really sort of creating like a lot of different solutions and sort of testing those. So using your sort of intuition as a designer or as a design team to explore multiple solutions, and then sort of watching what people do with those solutions, and sort of, again, not what they do. I mean, what they do, not what they say.
Okay, Luke, a bit more of a practical question now from Danette Kappa. She asks, you mentioned that you guys have been trialing working from home pre-corona.
Yes.
And she's keen to know what are the most important learnings you have from this and how it's going to affect your business going forward.
Cool. I mean, I think obviously the collaboration is such an important part of working from home. I think you kind of, we're very lucky in that we have all these amazing tools. You've got Zoom, you've got Google Hangouts, we've got sort of Figma. It really makes it quite easy we've got Slack. It really makes it quite easy to collaborate with people quite closely. We have sort of formal things in place, like a daily stand-up. We sort of interact with each other quite regularly. So I think there's sort of all these sort of tips and tricks that you can sort of take. You obviously want to trust people that they're doing what they say they're doing. So sort of sending updates at the end of the day, And yeah, I think really sort of like just using a couple of tips and tricks that are out there in order to fine tune the process. Yeah, I mean, I think we obviously recognize that it's something that people sort of are looking for when they're looking for employment. You know, it's such an important pull when you can say that you're working remotely or working from home, and there are obviously a massive amounts of benefits to it. So I do hope that we see it going forward, sort of see it from all companies going forward. But I do think, you know, it's obviously it needs to fit for the company itself, and obviously each business is very different.
Yeah, I think it's a particular challenge for creative agencies, because the reality is that creativity is not a linear process, and ideas can come from anywhere. I was actually chatting to Alistair King last week about this very thing, and how, you know, in an agency you get a brief and no one can solve it, so you head outside for a coffee or a cigarette in some people's cases, or whatever the case may be, and then you're sitting there chatting, and a little fragment of an idea pops in your head. You say to your man, "Oh, what about this?" And then boom, 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 you build, and then suddenly you've got a great idea. That kind of serendipity just simply doesn't happen when you're stuck in your home. Have you guys got any form of mechanism for unearthing that type of creative thinking amongst your team?
Yes, I mean, I think you sort of through the collaboration tools that we use, I think that is a very good point that you make, that you do lose that sort of in-person collaboration where you can sort of when you're working on a project, and you can get someone else's input or someone else's insights, and sort of, you know, someone else's experience, and sort of say like, this is what I've experienced on working on this project, or working on something similar in the past. But I think sort of when you're working remotely, it is sort of trying and incorporate that as much as possible. You know, sort of you know, asking your teammates, you know, what do you think of this? Sort of sharing in the process. And I think, you know, what makes again, sort of touching on Figma, and what makes it such a great tool is that you can sort of see exactly what other people are doing, and you can, you know, jump on a call and say, you know, like, hey, what about this? You know, try this. I think there certainly are ways around it. It's obviously a lot different than being in person. But yeah, I think to sort of use the tools that you have at your disposal. Yeah, just you know, share the things that you're working on. And, you know,
okay. Luke, one more question for you, and I'm actually going to try and aggregate a lot of, probably about 10 different questions along the same lines, and really they want to know how you built your agency. I'm going to read this one from Abongile. So the question from Abongile is, in regards to starting such a great brand, especially in a digitally centric world that we live in, what differentiates MakeReign from other agencies who specialize in the same areas you guys? And another question that's coming through in line with that is what have you done to promote your agency, to build your brand, other than produce great work?
In terms of differentiation, I think we sort of touched on that earlier, is that I think we sort of wanted to find that niche and how we made ourselves slightly different. So I think sort of really focusing in the product space, and sort of, you know, bringing that discovery, research, and testing into our process, sort of allows us to sort of that process, and that the way of thinking about design and sort of delivering those design solutions has helped us sort of, I think, differentiate ourselves. I think especially on a global scale, I think in terms of how we sort of promoted our business, social media is always great. I think we sort of we used Dribble we used sort of early days, I think, before we got our website out, which did quite a lot of wonders for us, sort of won a couple of awards, including some bookmarks, and that kind of really put us on the map. But before that, we used Instagram, and we sort of built quite a big following quite quickly, which was really cool. And we used Dribble, and kind of, yeah, I guess that is the really great thing, is it's kind of how you do things, is to show people what you do, and sort of you know, show people like your concepts and your way of thinking, and I think when sort of people see that aligns with them and what they kind of want to do, that they kind of approach you and want to work with you.
It's been really great having you, and I must say, for an agency that's only 4 years old, you guys have done incredibly well.